Welcome to Law Days Lattes, the podcast where we blend the world of law and business with a warm cup of information and common sense. I'm your host, Sidney Wheelan, attorney, real estate investor, and business owner. Each week, we'll be your go-to source for legal insights, business advice, and so much more. Whether you're a seasoned professional, an ambitious entrepreneur, or simply someone seeking guidance, we'll have you covered. From navigating the legal landscape to empowering you with valuable business strategies, we'll explore the legal side of life and enjoy a virtual latte along the way. So, grab your favorite latte, get comfortable, and let's dive into Law Days and Lattes. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Law Days and Lattes. I'm your host, Sidney Wheelan. This podcast is sponsored by the Wheelan Law Firm of Moberly, Missouri, your go-to source for legal issues encountered by your family and your business. I would again welcome you to Law Days and Lattes. It is my intention to break down complex legal topics and make them accessible for everyone. Whether you're a legal professional or simply curious about how the law impacts your everyday life, I want this podcast to bridge the gap between the courtroom and the public. With a focus on clear, engaging conversations, we aim to inform, inspire, and spark critical thinking about our legal system and its role in society. Please join us today as we explore the law's influence on real-world issues in a way that's easy to understand and impossible to ignore. Today's episode dives into a critical issue highlighted by the American Bar Association's Task Force for American Democracy: how serious threats to our democracy are emerging and why defending the U.S. Constitution is not just the responsibility of lawyers, but a civic duty for every American. What is the task force? The ABA's Task Force for American Democracy was created to address growing concerns about the integrity of American democratic institutions. Their mission is to identify and combat threats to democracy and to reinforce the foundational principles of the United States Constitution. Why now, you might ask? Well, it's because recent political polarization, erosion of trust in institutions, and external and internal threats have driven the need for the ABA to advocate for strong civic engagement and adherence to constitutional principles. The task force has identified key issues undermining our democratic institutions, including the rise of misinformation, the normalization of political violence, and a growing disillusionment with our democratic government processes. Let's talk about the threats to democracy identified by the task force. The increase and rise in misinformation, particularly during election cycles, has undermined public trust in our democratic processes. Deepening divisions between political parties and within society are making our democratic system of government more difficult, leading to political stalemates and weakened public faith in our government institutions. This is not necessary and undermines the Constitution and vision of our founding fathers. Differing views on how to solve our personal and societal problems should be seen as opportunities to learn and grow and to develop new and better solutions. Working solutions to most problems are not found on the far extremities of the left or right, but always in compromise, crafted from the best information and concerns of all parties. And, in my opinion, the only way to understand and work toward those solutions are to be able to have a dialogue and develop understandings of others that may not see our side of an argument or understand why we are so passionate about an issue. As a lawyer, debate is not necessarily a bad thing, but it can be done in a fashion that is respectful of everyone. We can encourage and welcome differing opinions and open dialogue and debate of those issues and problems. Efforts to manipulate the judiciary, weaken the checks and balances of the system, and defund democratic institutions are among the significant concerns noted by the ABA's task force. The ABA has determined external threats, including foreign cyber attacks and election interference both outside and inside this country, remain significant risks to the United States' democratic processes. So, audience, what can we do as everyday citizens about these problems? My belief is that we must emphasize the importance of civic engagement. It's the civic responsibility of every citizen, not just lawyers, to take a role in defending the Constitution. The ABA emphasizes that civic literacy and involvement are essential for a healthy democracy. We must restore our faith in our institutions. The task force advocates for stronger civic education to help Americans understand their rights, the workings of the U.S. government, and the importance of engaging in local, state, and national elections. There are some concrete steps that we can take to defend our democracy. The ABA calls for stronger legal frameworks to protect elections, improve transparency in political funding, and ensure that the judiciary remains independent. We must promote bipartisanship. Efforts to overcome hyperpartisanship are crucial. The ABA encourages fostering dialogue across political lines to address issues like voting rights and the peaceful transfer of power. Lawyers and legal professionals, as well as the public, are urged to engage in public education campaigns, advocating for voting rights and challenging efforts that undermine our democratic principles. So, specific calls to action. What can we do? The first thing is get involved. I would encourage my listeners to get involved in their communities, volunteer in local election processes, and stay informed about threats to the democracy. Become a poll worker in your community and encourage others to do the same. Get to know your local election officials and your local leaders. Do your best to learn and understand any proposed rule changes and how your local leaders support or possibly don't support those changes, and ask them why. Direct others in your community who have concerns about the election process to reliable sources of information, such as the information provided by the League of Women Voters. Attend or even host an event in your community about local elections, and by all means ask questions. And regardless of your political affiliation, stand up for our judges, our court workers, and our justice system. Support our election workers and our election processes, and defend our American democracy and the rule of law. Condemn violence or even the threat of violence, especially as it relates to our elections and our judicial system. I want to close with the idea that the U.S. Constitution isn't a relic. It's a living document that requires ongoing defense and understanding by all citizens, not just legal professionals. Remember, our democracy is fragile, and our Constitution only survives when citizens actively defend it. The American Bar Association's Task Force for American Democracy has outlined the risk we face, but it has also provided a clear path forward. We have the privilege of living in the greatest country in the world, with vast resources and unprecedented opportunities to improve not only our lives, but improve the lives of generations to come. It's up to all of us to take the steps needed to safeguard the future of our nation and our world. I've included the link to the ABA's task force paper on American democracy for further reading. Thank you for tuning in to Law Days and Lattes. Be sure to subscribe, and don't forget to share this episode with your colleagues or other family members who need to hear this message. And please, remember to check out our Law Days and Lattes podcast pages on Facebook and Instagram. Our goal is to create a space where we can learn from each other and grow together. So we want to hear from you. Share your thoughts and ask questions. We'll put all of the links in our show notes. Again, I'm Sidney Wheelan, and I'll see you next time. Until then, stay informed and make sure your vote reflects your stance on important matters. As always, my friends, grab your favorite latte, hold your loved ones tight, and have a great week.